Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and today we are going to answer a question that happens for beginners in Excel and even some people who are comfortable with it, and that is, how can I navigate this large spreadsheet? How do I go from one cell to one very far away? Well, I have some answers for you, and we're going to look at just some basic ways to navigate an Excel spreadsheet. Our spreadsheet today is fairly small, but anything that we learned today about navigating and how to get from one cell to another will apply to a large spreadsheet as well. So just so we're comfortable with the contents of this spreadsheet, we can see that it belongs to a craft club that meets every first Monday in some members' home. And then they've created a list of the different months of the year, and they have volunteers who have volunteered their homes for the group to meet. And very important for even a craft club is who's going to bring the refreshments, because they meet for several hours, and that's important too. Well, let's learn how to move around in this spreadsheet. If you have a small spreadsheet, or even with a large one, if the cells that you want to work with are just right in front of you, you simply take your mouse and click. And as you can see, as I've clicked in D9, the cell border shows up, and when I click someplace else, this is D13, then again I can see that this is now the active cell. And for a lot of people, that's all they need. Now for a larger spreadsheet though, we have scroll bars. So follow my mouse over to the right where we have a vertical scroll bar where I can simply click on that bar and drag down, or above and below that bar there are arrows that point up and down. This one points down, and as I click I can move a row at a time, or if I go to the top of the bar and find the arrow pointing up, I click and I can go up one row at a time. We also have horizontal scroll bars, so again I can move the bar as I click on it and drag, or I have arrows that move to the left or move to the right. And again, it's about one column at a time as I click and move around. But there are some other ways that aren't quite as evident. One is the name box. So for example, I have clicked here in D13, but if I go to the name box, which is above column A here, and right now it even says D13, notice that my tooltip says name box, so if you're a little confused where it is, rest your mouse on top of it and it'll tell you that it's the name box. When I click in that box, I can then type another address. Now you have to know where you want to go, but let's say that I want to go to E4. I just type E4 and press enter, and now my active cell is E4. So that name box can be really helpful. Now another thing that we can do, and I have a picture of my keyboard here, notice that it even has kind of a well-worn space bar, but we have Control and G on your keyboard. When you press Control G, it brings up a nice little dialog box that it says, well, you're now at D13, but where do you want to go next? So I could type in, actually that's where we came from, was D13. Let's go to C18. So I'll type C18 and click OK, and now my active cell is C18. Besides Control G, if you are a little leery about using your keyboard shortcuts, what you can do is go up to the ribbon, and on the far right there's a Find and Select button that has a drop down. When you click it, the third choice here is Go To, and it takes you to that same little dialog box where now let's type A2 as where we want to go. So A2, and we'll click OK, and now our active cell is indeed A2. One of the very first things that you learn with Excel is that if you're in a cell and you press enter, the active cell becomes the cell that's in the row below. So here I'm in C7, I press enter, and now C8 is the active cell. And as I continue to press enter, I just keep going down that column. But what you may not realize is the shift key reverses some of the keyboard keys. In this case, if I hold down the shift and press enter, I go up the column instead of down the column. If I want to go to the right across a row instead of going down a column, I can click in a cell and then use the tab key to go to the right, or just like we learned with the enter key, the shift key reverses tab as well. So if I hold down the shift and press tab, I go to the left. Another way that you may decide to move around in your spreadsheet is to use your arrow keys. Now generally the arrow keys can be found on your keyboard, sometimes right below enter and sometimes below, but to the right a little bit. It just depends on how your keyboard looks. But you can click in a cell and then use the down arrow to go down, the right arrow to go to the right, the up arrow to go up, and the left arrow to go to the left. One of the other ways that you may decide to navigate your spreadsheet, especially if it's large, is to use page up or page down. Now, those keys on the keyboard kind of move around. They might be to the right of the enter key, they might be above the 10 keypad, so it just depends on how your computer keyboard is laid out. But let's look at this because this is something that depends on the resolution of your monitor. So for example, I can only see 18 rows the way my laptop is set up currently. You might be able to see 25 or even 30 some rows. So it will always move the number of rows that you can see in this initial view. So let me go to page down and press that key on the keyboard, and the first 18 rows are now hidden and I see the next 18. Press page down again and I see the next 18 and the next 18, etc. If I use page up, that reverses page down, so now I'm going to go up 18 rows at a time, or again, whatever your resolution is, that's how many rows you will move. But it helps you move very quickly through a spreadsheet. One of the keys that you might use from time to time is home, and home is to the right of enter. Sometimes it's between enter and the 10 keypad, but for my laptop it's above that 10 key numeric pad. And when you use home, you are generally way far out to the right in the columns, and you want to get back to the first position of the data in a particular row. So here, for example, I'm in C6, and when I press home, it takes me to A6, to the home position of that particular row. Some of the key combinations that you may find yourself using quite often are Control plus Home or Control plus End. And the Control key, while it's in the lower left of your keyboard, you're going to find Home and End again between Enter and the 10 keypad or above the 10 keypad. So let's see what they do. First of all, if I click kind of even out of my spreadsheet, if I press Control Home, it's going to take me to the beginning of the worksheet. Now, some people will tell you that it always takes you to A1. That's not exactly correct, but what we can say is it will take you to the beginning of your worksheet. Now, Control End, on the other hand, looks for the last cell. It's the cell in the bottom row and the far right column. So when I press Control End, it should take me to cell, in this case, C17. Once in a while, when you use Control End, it will go to say D18, and you'll wonder why, but generally that means that there's been something typed in that cell that Excel still remembers, and so it will go to that cell rather than the exact end of the spreadsheet. Still, it gets you close to where you want to be, so Control End can be one of your favorite tools. The control key can also be used in combination with the arrow keys, and just keep in mind that if you use control down arrow, then control up arrow would reverse that position, as well as if I use control right arrow to go to the right, then control left arrow would take me back to where I originally was. And we can see here that if I click in A1, then I press control down arrow, that it takes me to the next cell that has information in it. I press control down arrow again, it takes me to the next cell. So it's skipping the blank cells. When I press control down arrow again, it takes me to the last cell in the range of cells that have something in them, and it takes me to A17. Now when I press control down arrow again, there's nothing else there, so it takes me all the way down to the bottom to the last row, which is 1,048,576. Now that was control down arrow, so if I use control up arrow, it should take me back through those same cells and find the same pieces of information. Now if I use my control right arrow, in this case there's nothing stopping it, so when I press control right arrow, it takes me to XFD, the very last column in Excel. I hold down the control and I use the left arrow and it takes me back to the beginning. Something that's very similar to control plus the arrow keys is using end plus the arrow keys. The main difference is if you use control plus the arrow keys, you're holding down that control key as you press the arrow key. With end, you actually press it, let up on the key, and then press the arrow key. So here I am in A1, I press end, let up, and press the down key, and it takes me to A3, which is where I have information. I press the end key and the down arrow again, and it finds the next cell that has information. If I press end and up, it reverses. If I use end plus the right arrow, now this is going to probably take me way out. Yes, it does. And then if I press end and the left arrow, it takes me out. However, if I come down where I have data, I have end and the right arrow, it takes me to the end of the row where there is still information, but no farther. And then again, I could press end plus the left arrow, and it takes me to the beginning of that row. Whatever you decide works fine. It just depends on whether you like to hold down the control or press the end separate from the arrow keys. To learn even more, be sure to go to mymcpl.org/online learning, where you will find great online resources that include Universal Class, lynda.com, and Learning Express Library. Tune in each week as we introduce new videos on a variety of tech topics. You can find us at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday and 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Be sure to find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, or if you prefer, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at MCPLMO, where you can find our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.